What's up, guys? It's me again, Christian Rodriguez, and today I wanted to talk about self-improvement, and I want to give you guys an update on me so far. So basically, I've been, working on my goals, and I've been working on my agency, right? But, I took this chance. I moved to Chicago, and something that I noticed is that it's not working the way that I wanted it to, right? Plans didn't work. I'll admit it. I'll be the first one to admit that I fucked up, right? And that's okay because that's part of it, right? That's part of it for being a man. So really what I want to talk about today is that men need to fucking build themselves. Men need to create value, right? And I kind of want to get that through. I want to talk about this to young men. I want to talk to young men in this who are watching this video. Even if you're in your late 20s like me, or you're older, maybe in your 30s and you still haven't figured it out yet, this video also pertains to you. But yeah, let me get started. So yeah, men need to fucking create value. Men need to build from scratch, right? And I'm not saying this. I know you've probably heard this advice, but I'll talk about based off of my experiences, right? So like I came here, I've been working on a business, but to be honest, the market is harsh. The market it will tell you if your business is good or not, and that's basically what's happened to me. And does it suck? Yeah, sure. It sucked. It can be frustrating because, I felt like I invested a lot of time into it for it not to turn out the way I wanted it to. But there's also a bright light to it, right? Obviously, I have a plan B. I'm not going to mention the plan B until I'm actually in the trenches doing it. And so I prepared for this mentally. Like I knew this was a possibility. So now I have to I have to exercise that option. But it gave me the idea to talk about this because, right, when you're young, right, when you're young, you can. So, it's commonly talked about that, you know, men and women have equal opportunities to do, and that's true. Men and women do have equal opportunities, but I'm not going to get too far into this because I don't want to spark some controversy. But women are given their value. Women are born, they hit puberty, maybe they get to the age of 16, maybe even younger, 14, right? They show signs of beauty, and men are flirting with them already, right? Boys are flirting with them. They get to 18 and they're very optimistic. They're in their 20s and they have the world in front of them. That's not the same for men. Men have to fucking, first of all, there's a reason why men peak later, right? I don't want to copy um, everything that people have said. Obviously, I've learned this, but it's true. Men peak later. Men peak in mid to late 30s, right? And for a reason, because men are valued on competency, on skills, on how much money you have, like resources, right? Accessibilities, like traveling, cool things like that. Technically, you could do it when you're young, but also when you have more money, resources, influence, it's easier to travel, right? You can just do it whenever the hell you want. You have more autonomy. So, yeah, men are valued on things like that, right? And even social skills, stuff like that. For many men, that takes time to build. Sure, there's men who freaking have it right away and are very good at it, but for most men, they need to build that stuff. And the reason why I talked about this is because you can't live thinking that you could just like chill in your 20s, or you can just chill and, play video games, watch the Mets, watch three home games of the 8-game home stand for the Mets, right? It's going to be a complete waste of your time. It's not going to get you out of where you are, right? Because it's almost necessary. Like men have to, like, self-improvement for men is essential. Self-improvement for men is not optional. It's not something that you just start doing Like it's not optional. Let's be completely honest. Let's say it how it is, right? For women, right? It's nice to have, right? They can use self-improvement to for inner peace, for great stuff like that, but it's not going to stop them from getting options in dating, right? If they're hot, right? If they're in their 20s and they're hot and they decide to do some self-improvement or not, doesn't really change anything for them, right? Like in the immediate. But for men, it's literally life or death, right? If you do no self-improvement, if you gain no skills, you don't make any money, you you remain broke, you you don't learn anything, right? You don't gain any sort of fucking experience in something. What's going to happen is no one's going to care because men don't get protected, men don't get sympathy. So no one's going to fucking care. And I'm not saying this to be mean. I'm saying this because this is the truth. No one's going to care until you create value as a man. No one's going to save you. No one's going to come and no rich woman's going to come and save you. Like that's just not that's something that's not going to happen, right? You can't just have a kid and then you're protected. That's not the same thing for men. For you as a man, you need to fucking build value, right? Watch YouTube channels I recommend you watch. Dan Martell, Brandon Carter. You can watch Rich Cooper has really good stuff. Um, what else? For self improvement, if you want to learn automation content, Stephen G. Pope is very good with that. If for fitness, you can watch Thenx, his videos. He has good home body workouts. You can even watch Mike Thurston's another good one. But these guys are accomplished. Like they've been through the grind. They've worked their way up, right? So it's very good to like listen to these stories. And that's the reason why I really love reading books. You know, I always talk about books. I always talk about how they have an impact on my life because books teaches you that that many of these successful men went through similar paths as you. Maybe they were failures, maybe they sucked at this, maybe they were broke for many years. And I want to be optimistic here, right? Because I know I started off very intense, a little negative could be, right? But I want to talk about the positives too, right? So obviously I talked about Men Peak later, and I want to talk about this book that I read. It's called How I made a video on it in the past. It's called How I Raised Myself from Failure to Success by Frank Bettger, right? He was a former baseball player. I think he played for the Cardinals. He was a salesman basically. He was selling insurance, and for his 20s, the vast majority of his 20s, he was a broke failure, right? And by 29, he was still a failure, and he decided he needed to change his life around. He needed to turn his life around. And that's why he wrote the book, because that's when he started really turning his life around at 29, right? Like I'm thinking of that, and that actually made me more optimistic because I'm 28, right? So him being 29 and still being a failure, and he still was able to figure it out and became a multimillionaire. That's very inspiring. That's the type of story I want to read. I don't want to read about the 18-year-old guy who started some software company and became a multi-billionaire, right? Who became a multi-billionaire and talks about how you need to and gives you advice on it. Like I don't really resonate with that. I don't know about you. If it does, then that's great. But for me, that doesn't really resonate with me. Or the 21-year-old who figured it out immediately and became rich. Like I'm sure like that happens and that still happens. And if that happens to you, that's fucking amazing. That's great. But for the vast majority of men, that's not going to happen. The vast majority of men are going to suck at most things that they do for a while, right? They're going to suck at it. They're not going to be great at it. They're probably going to get criticized for it, right? Even something as small as me doing combat sports, right? Me doing jiu-jitsu, Muay Thai. People criticize me for it. Family, they'll tell me, "Why are you doing that? Why can't you do better things, right? Why can't you uh do other things? Why do you have to fight?" Like because that's what they assume, right? I'm not even like fighting. I'm just sparring. And the thing is, you can't really listen to people because people don't really want. I guess this is a different topic, so I'm not going to get too into it. But don't don't really understand. That's the first thing. And the second thing is people want you to be safe. Like family, they want you to be safe, but safe is not always going to grow you as a man or make you a better version of yourself. So I would completely ignore the family part if I'm being completely honest on that. And if it's friends who are envious, making you feel bad for working hard on your goals, having goals, on taking the gym more seriously, maybe cutting off alcohol, dude, cut them off. Tell them to go fuck themselves or just ghost them. Just leave the group chat, delete their numbers, and just cut them off. I'm not going to tell you because most people will tell you, oh, but you've known them for many years. Who cares? Cut them off. Because you know what? If you're broke in your 20s, if you're broke in your at the age of 40 and you're unhappy with your life, you're unsatisfied, maybe you don't have any options with women, first of all, they're not going to care. They're not going to be around. They're not going to put their arm around you. They're not going to support you. They won't be there. I promise you, they will not be there because everyone is interested in themselves. Everyone is in it for their own self interest. Just remember that. So you have to think about yourself. You have to think about yourself and you have to focus on what you want to accomplish, what you need to achieve, right? Now, fitness is super important. I'm going to get to that in a second, but I want to start with money because money is literally, especially for men, it's the most important thing because money gives you options. It gives you optionality, right? If you want to if you start getting acne on your face, right? What do? You just go to the dermatologist. If you're broke, you're not going to do that. You're not going to want to pay for the dermatologist. You're probably just going to leave the acne and let it add up on your face, like poke the dots, right? If you have neck soreness like I do right now and you want to go to maybe you want to go get a sports massage because you've been training hard, right? You just do it because it's very beneficial to you and you know the benefits of it. So you don't ask for it, you just do it, right? If you need coaching in a certain field, whether it's business or you need coaching in even you don't stretch, right? And you work out consistently, but you don't stretch. You just pay for a trainer so you have more accountability to sticking to a stretching routine or yoga, right? That's just an example of it. Obviously, this is not specific, but that's just an example of it. Money gives you optionality. If you don't like where you live, you just get up and move, right? Because you have the money, you have the leverage to just get up and move, right? If even with dating, I would even say with dating, it gives you optionality as well, right? Because sure, dating, I'm going to tell you right now, um, attracting women is not just black and white. Like I'm going to get more money and women are just going to want to suck my dick. No, that's not how it works. They're probably gonna. It's more. Women are more emotional, right? It's how they feel, how you make them feel. But the thing is, money gets you in the proximity of the women you want to be with, right? You want to be around the women that you want to be with, you're probably going to have to be in certain neighborhoods, hanging out in certain venues. And these venues probably cost a little bit more money. You might want to have to start going to upscale gyms, which cost more money to be able to pay for that membership, right? So these are just little examples of things that you need to, things that money gives you, right? If you are sick of maybe being in, uh, obviously it's springtime now, but in the summertime, in the wintertime in Chicago, the weather's horrible, right? There'll be weeks that there's no sun. It's negatives. It's in the negatives. It's freezing cold. It's windy. It's snowing, and you don't want to be in Chicago. You're sick of the weather. If you have money, you just get on a plane and go to the Caribbean or something or somewhere warm. You go to a different part of the world where it's summertime. Like you decide, let me go to Carnival in Brazil, right? Or let me go to Buenos Aires, right? And let me spend the winter time, which is summertime over there, and let me go there and then return to Chicago in the spring. That's what money gives you, that optionality. So when people say money isn't important, that's a complete load of bullshit. Money doesn't buy happiness. We're not talking about buying happiness. I don't think not being able to pay your bills is makes you happy, right? I don't think being stuck in a neighborhood that you don't like makes you happy. So I really hate when people say that. So that's what money. The second thing is now fitness, right? And yes, you don't need fitness technically. You can have money, you don't need fitness. A lot of guys have done it. I completely get it, because people, there's someone who's gonna mention that argument. You don't need fitness to have you to have money, and I agree, you don't. But that's not the point, right? If Because the older you get, right, if you don't take care of your fitness, right, you're gonna start slowly gaining some more body weight, some fat, and you're more likely to have to deal with disease like diabetes, obesity, right? You're gonna have to deal with certain freaking inconveniences, knee problems, right? Back pain, shit like that, right? And this is from probably neglecting your fitness for all these years, right? And sure, like, when you have money, right? What are things you want to do? You probably want to enjoy your life. You probably want to travel more. You probably want to see more of the world, right? With money. How are you going to want to see more of the world if you have knee pain and you're out of shape, right? Say you go to Europe, you go to a city in Europe. I'm just going to throw a city as an example. You end up going to Palermo in Sicily, in Italy, right? You're walking around, and what are you going to do? Or the Amalfi Coast. You go to the Amalfi Coast, you're walking around the beautiful city on the coast, and then what? You're probably not going to enjoy it, because you're going to be freaking you're going to be exhausted. You're not going to It's not going to be the same as if you were physically fit to explore, enjoy the scenery, the venue. That's the way I see it, at least, right? And even let's bring it back to sex, right? So yeah, you get a woman, right? And you'll attract women, but you might get gold diggers, right? Because I'm not saying that all women are gold diggers, but if you're not physically attractive, right? You're not attractive, then you're another optionality that you're probably going to have to deal with is you're going to have another trait. You're going to have money, but if you only lead with money, you're only going to be a target to women, right? And if you're not physically fit, now she's not that physically attracted to you. How about when you guys want to have sex and you can't get your dick hard? Let's be honest. Like, that's like, if you have health problems, you're not going to be able to do all these things. You're going to need a bunch of Viagra and drugs to be able to just do some basic fun things that men want to do, right? And that's an example of fitness. That's an example of why you need to be fit. Another thing too is being physically capable, right? Like, I always talk about combat sports, and I do think that it has the biggest ROI for men. Combat sports. First of all, it gets you fighting other men. It gets you competing with other men, right? It's in a controlled environment, but it gets you, being violent, it's a controlled violence against other men. And sure, it's painful. It doesn't feel great, right? It's going to hurt. You're going to be sore. I'm sore right now talking about this. I was sparring last night. But the benefits are so freaking great. First of all, it teaches you emotional control, something that men need to learn, because there's a difference, right? Women can get away with lashing out emotionally. I'm not saying that it's right, it's wrong. I'm not saying That's not what I'm saying, right? I'm saying women can get away with it. Men cannot. Men are physically stronger. We are physically stronger. If a man's lashing out emotionally, he's seen as a danger to everyone around him, right? Or a threat. So men get punished severely more for that, right? So combat sports teaches you how to control your emotions, because the first time you start sparring, you're scared, you're terrified, right? And you basically have to learn how to weather the storm, right? And you can't just think about other things. because you'll get punched in the face or choked. So I highly recommend you just start with a martial art, whether it's jiu-jitsu, boxing, Muay Thai, Dutch kickboxing, karate, doesn't freaking matter. Just preferably something with sparring. So even MMA works too. And yeah, I'm gonna leave it at that. I hope you guys enjoyed the content. I'm gonna keep creating more. And yeah, I just needed to let this video out. So subscribe and take care.